Come on in, sit on down, take a load off, and yeah, let's tune in to what's going on this week in space. I'm your host with the most, Jonah Emerson Bell, tarot reader, astrologer, licensed mental health counselor, and your weekly wizard here to give you the breakdown of everything that is happening in space. So, yeah, before we sort of begin, I want to wish everybody a happy Scorpio full moon. The full moon in Scorpio perfected about 12 minutes ago at 10:55 Mountain Time, making that, I don't know, 9:55 Pacific Time and 12:55 Eastern Time. So we'll be talking about the Scorpio full moon, some of the aspects involved in that, as well as some Mercury transits to Pluto and Mars. And I don't know, I think that there's some other stuff in here as well. Jupiter's doing some things. Welcome on in and yeah, enjoy. I also want to wish everybody a happy belated Mother's Day. I hope you called your mom. And if not, I hope you called somebody who is a mom. And yeah, let's get this party started right. So starting off today, Monday, May the 12th. Like I said, we have this full moon in Scorpio, which is occurring at 22 degrees and 12 arc minutes of that fixed water sign. And a full moon is always going to be an opposition between the sun and the moon. So we're in Taurus season right now. We have the sun in Taurus. Perfecting and the moon in Scorpio, these are both fixed signs. Taurus is a fixed earth sign. Like I said, Scorpio is a fixed water sign. And we have this opposition between the sun and the moon perfecting today at 22 degrees and 12 arc minutes. And this lunation occurred about 15 minutes ago at 10:55 a.m. Mountain Time, where I'm at, making that 9:55 in the AM on the West Coast and 12:55 in the PM over there on the Eastern Seaboard. Good morning, everybody. Good morning, Seven. Good morning, Gina Maria. Come on in. We're just getting started here. So yeah, happy full moon, everybody. The full moon is in full effect right now. So this is the Scorpio full moon, right? And the Scorpio full moon is said to be, as legend has it, the moon that the Buddha was born under, became enlightened under, and then died under. The Buddha and Buddhism has a deep connection to the full moon in Scorpio. And there's an interesting quality about this lunation. Because we're in Taurus season, right? Which is this fixed earth sign, right? The fixed sign of spring, which is maintaining the energy of spring and really sustaining it, right? And this is when we begin planting. It's like when life really feels like it's starting to return to the world. And Taurus opposes the sign of Scorpio, which is the fixed sign of the autumn, right? And Scorpio season is the time when we engage in like the last harvest, right? When we take the remaining life from the branches and vines when animals are culled, right? And also, it's the time when visible life really begins disappearing from the natural world. And so, the Scorpio full moon is a reminder that even when life feels really abundant and new things are being planted and new things are beginning to sprout and bloom and the flowers are coming out, there's the other side of this coin, which is that harvest and the experience of death and decay. And the Scorpio full moon is a reminder of that, which I think is a really important thing to hold with us, right? And so this full moon is an opportunity to hold our mortality and the truth of death, even when we are in the experience of life, right? Um, and So it's a reminder, right, that death is also not the end, but it's part of a larger cycle, right? And the things that fade away and decompose also fertilize the soil so that new life can begin, just as the Buddha was born and enlightened and died under this lunation, under the Scorpio full moon. And so Scorpio is a fixed water sign that seeks depth and intense connection, right? The scorpion is armored and ready to strike if it feels threatened, right? And in extreme cases, if it feels really trapped, it will actually like sting itself to death, right? As a way out, um, right? So however, right, even with this armor, even with this sort of scorpion tail, this weapon, the sign of Scorpio really craves vulnerability. As this fixed water sign, it really wants to go deep and forge emotional connections. And in order to have deep emotional connections, it requires a level of vulnerability in order to connect and form these emotional bonds, right? Which is the thing that Scorpio craves. And just like the poison in the scorpion sting, it wants to know things from the inside out. It wants to like go deep in there and kind of like bubble out, right? And figure things out from the inside out. And as a Mars ruled sign, it really wants to penetrate to the core of something, to dig into the depths and figure it out at its innermost level. However, in order for this to occur, the scorpion must also be vulnerable in some ways. So, Scorpio needs to find a way of creating enough safety or trust to be able to develop those deep emotional bonds and to let down some of its armor and to kind of let down its stinger so that it can allow things to come in so it can really make those connections and get to the depth. So the full moon is a time of culmination and release. And this full moon follows the Taurus new moon, which occurred back on April the 27th. And there's a couple of themes that are being revived or reiterated during this week's astrology that really point to some of the things that were happening April 26th and 27th. We have this full moon again, which is the culmination of the new moon in Taurus, which occurred on the 27th. And then we also, during this lunation, we have Mercury squaring Pluto. Which it perfects like right after the full moon perfects. So actually pretty soon during this report, that square will be perfected. And then at the end of the week, we have Mercury squaring Mars. And I think this is going to be reviving and helping us integrate or process some of the information that came up with the Mars Pluto opposition, which perfected on April the 26th. So we have this sort of reviewing of some of the things that were happening at the very end of April. It's just something to think about. Um, so anyway, back in the Taurus new moon on April the 27th, that may have been a time where new seeds were planted, dealing with some of the Taurian themes, right? Values, desire to cultivate more of what we want, really being able to appreciate the nice things in life that help us to feel safe and secure, right? Now this lunation has come to this culminating point where we are reaping some of the fruits of those intentions. And some of what is revealed, I think, with this lunation is not just the need for like safety and stability, but a need for deep emotional connection, which sometimes requires difficult conversation and vulnerability. Um, and these are necessary, right? These sort of like deep bonds are necessary in order to develop more of the joy and pleasure in our life that we may be seeking. And this full moon is also a time of letting go of what we cannot or do not want to carry. This is an opportunity to let go of some of the levels of protection that we might be hanging on to that prevent us from experiencing joy and coming into deeper connection with ourselves and with each other as well as with the world. And we can't just like let these things go, right? We can't let down our scorpion sting just because some wingnut on Instagram told us to. That's completely unsafe and stupid, right? But we need to figure out ways of creating enough safety to allow in that vulnerability, right? And we can think about the resources that we have that can provide that level of safety that can make it all right for us to let down our guard and come into a deeper connection, right? With ourselves, with each other, and with the natural world, right? I think that part of the depth that we get to experience, and one of the things that Taurus brings up is our connection and ability to co-regulate through nature, through the natural world, with animals, with trees, plants, et cetera, whatever, whatever is your cup of tea in that realm, and to figure out ways that we can kind of like allow ourselves to go deep with that connection. So the full moon in Scorpio also asks us to let go of everything that is not vital, not just our armor, right? But everything that we might be carrying with us that is not vital for our survival or vital for our transformation and our growth, right? Anything that is not integral to that core sense of self, right? Because again, Scorpio wants to go deep to that like core. And so anything that is not really integral to that, we might want to think about letting go or releasing, right? Anything that we cannot live without, right? And that is a thing with Scorpio is these like deep sort of survival mechanisms, right? And also the recognition that our mortality is always walking with us. And when we can hold that and recognize that, it kind of forces us to live each moment like it's our last. Right, not in a unhinged way, but in a way of really trying to suck the marrow out of life, right? And so the things that we are carrying with us, um, right, the things that we can live without, Scorpio's like, yeah, we don't need that. Let's get more of like what feels really vital and really alive. So this is an opportunity to really strip things down to their most necessary components, right, and our most vital and necessary connections. It asks us really to look at what we cannot live without, and the things that touch us at the very depth of our souls. Scorpio is not interested in anything that is superficial or surface, right? And this full moon gives us the opportunity to explore what things feel so important that we cannot possibly live without them, right? And to really honor these deep and vital and juicy connections. Right? Anything that kind of like sits on the surface and refuses to like go to that depth and to go to that level with us, maybe we can let go of. And I'm not saying like we need to throw it in the fire and get rid of it forever, but like maybe set it to the side because I think this is an opportunity to really refine what stirs our souls. And this is an opportunity to really consider what we are willing to carry with us into that next cycle, right? Because Saturn is preparing to change signs in the next 2 weeks, right? Ending their tenure in Pisces and moving into the Mars ruled sign of Aries. And so, we are kind of sitting at the precipice of this change and being able to really sit with, okay, what feels really alive, what feels really necessary, what can I not do without? And I think that this is a really important thing to consider and to sit with and to be with, right? We also might be experiencing sudden unforeseen changes with this full moon and throughout this week because we're going to have the sun is basically conjunct Uranus during this full moon. The sun is at 22 degrees. I believe Uranus is at 26. The moon will oppose Uranus later today, and we will get a Sun Uranus conjunction on Saturday, which I'll talk about when we get there. Right. And so with, the Uranian energy of like sudden flashes of inspiration, kind of sudden eruptions or explosions or sudden unforeseen events, we're going to be asked to really consider what we want to hold on to and what we are holding on to and what we choose to carry with us, right? When things get destabilized, right, we grab for what feels really necessary and vital, right? And what might keep us safe, but also like what we want to carry with us and what we want to really strive for. Um, and I think considering this can help us to skillfully navigate the transformation that Scorpio calls us to engage with. Um, So, during this lunation, we have the sun basically conjunct Uranus, moon opposing it, right? Uranus is a planet of unpredictability and sudden change. It seeks liberation and freedom. With Uranus involved in this full moon story, things may come to light that disrupt the stability that the Taurus sun is trying to hold on to. And it might pull us into some of these survival fears that get activated with that Scorpio archetype and might call us to go deeper and uncover hidden truths about ourselves as well as the world around us. The insecurity or instability that Uranus can activate can bring up some like resource insecurity, right? As well as fight or flight responses, right? So we might find that, right? Something sudden might happen, a loud noise, and we go into that Scorpio sting, right? Or we might cling to what makes us feel safe. And I always think about during COVID, and y'all remember that? Remember way back when it was COVID, at the very beginning of it, when, all of this fear was spreading throughout the lands. And one of the things that people kind of held onto or grabbed onto was toilet paper, right? And everyone was like, oh, hoarding toilet paper, right? Which seems, maybe silly, but it makes a lot of sense, right? Because when we are afraid and afraid for our lives, it activates our root chakra, right? And Scorpio deals with elimination and the genitals, right? That area of our life. And I think that it holds a lot of survival fears, and people instantly were like, I need to poop, I need toilet paper, right? Like, I'm scared, right? And it creates this very visceral root chakra response. And so people like hold on to what creates safety around that root chakra response, around those very basic kind of reptilian brain survival fears. And it makes a lot of sense, right? And this is like some Scorpio shit right there. That like, oh man, my like survival fear, my root chakra is activated. I need something to like keep me safe. Oh, toilet paper. I've got to hoard that. Right. And so really thinking about what comes up, right? And what activates the sort of Scorpio center of the genitals, reproduction, right? And elimination, the kind of what needs to be released and the fears or old stories that we can let go of, right? And also, how do we create enough safety around these sort of basic survival mechanisms, the survival of ourself, and the ways that we reproduce or hold on or let go, right? And I think that the sort of unpredictable Uranian energy that is all woven up in this full moon is going to bring some of that up, right? And so I think we want to learn how to be with what comes up and how we can develop this felt sense of safety so that we can sort of be with, the upheaval, right? That Uranus, the destabilization, right? And even dysregulation that Uranus can bring to the party and come into connection with ourselves, right? And our emotional and physical resources. And this will allow us to make better decisions so we can respond to situations instead of reacting from a place of survival fears or being in this highly activated state. Uranus has a tendency to bring new and unpredictable experiences and information into our world. In Taurus, it's like an earthquake that cracks the foundation, right? And again, like when this happens, we automatically like reach for something that makes us feel safe. And so something that we can practice this week is like really thinking about that felt sense of safety. What does it feel like when I'm safe in my body? What does it feel like when I'm safe in the world? What are some of the things that like help me to feel safe? Is it a stone that I hold? Is it like a blanket? Is it a TV show? Is it a podcast? I don't know. I'm just rattling off some of the things that make me feel safe. Right? But we all have these things that like when we're like, oh, we like grab for something that like helps to ground us and helps to bring in a felt sense of security. Um, and so I also think about the tarot card in the the tower card in the tarot, which, depicts this like lightning bolt that shatters the tower that we have built around ourselves, right? Which can be false identity, false sense of security, all of these things that we build around ourselves to try and protect ourselves or make ourselves better than, or sometimes make ourselves less than, right? In order to feel okay. And Uranus comes in and throws a lightning bolt at it and shatters it, right? And then we're just like left there naked on the ground, right? And so when this happens, what can we use to resource ourselves? And I think that the lightning bolt that Uranus brings, that brings down the tower, ultimately liberates us from these old identities or old ideas. But it can feel incredibly scary to let go and allow that sense of transformation and liberation to occur, right? Uranus is like not the most delicate. So it'll suddenly be like, damn, that's done, right? And then we're like left there in like a pile of smoking rubble. And I'm not saying that this is going to happen in a physical way or like necessarily going to occur. This is also going to depend on, your personal placements. And I'm speaking about the mundane or the collective here, right? But I think that there is the possibility that Uranus, kind of breaks through some of the protective barriers that we have set up around ourselves, which maybe we think are keeping us safe, but are also potentially like limiting our ability to grow and the process of transformation, right? And so Uranus has this tendency to want to like flip the table and tear things down when they don't meet this idealized vision of how things should be. And so we want to really check in with ourselves that we are not just like flipping the table when we are asked to get real or go deep or to be with difficult conversations or emotional experiences, right? And if we're sort of asked to enter into this difficult emotional depths that Scorpio is calling us to, and we don't have that capacity or we're afraid to go there, right? We might be like, no, I quit, right? It's over. And so we really want to like sit with that, right? And see, okay, there's this tendency to like want to run away or blow it up. But what happens if I allow myself to go deep, right? And with Scorpio, we're really looking for what's under the surface and what's under that and what's under that and what's under that until we get to the sort of beating heart of the situation. So if we feel that kind of activation, that survival fear, and I think that like being in a difficult situation, difficult conversation, being emotionally vulnerable, this really activates some survival fears. And it may make us want to like blow things up and run. And so to like really sit with that and notice, okay, what's happening in my body, right? What is under this? Oh, there's this fear here. There's this fear that I'm going to be vulnerable or exposed, or somebody's going to get mad at me, or it's not going to work out, or, my heart's going to get broken, or I'm not going to have what I need. Okay, like let me be with that. What's underneath that? What's underneath that? What is this trying to tell me? What does this want me to know? Right. And so these are some ways that we can try and sit with that, right? Try and gather some more information from what's arising instead of being like, oh, I'm terrified, I need to go. I need to blow this up, right? They're all going to laugh at you. Right? And so, this lunation might activate the need for some difficult conversations that can pull us deeper into intimacy and sense of connection. Because about 27 minutes after the full moon is exact, which is like a couple minutes ago from right now, we have Mercury squaring Pluto. So that brings us to our next topic. Mercury and Taurus squaring Pluto and Aquarius at 3 degrees and 48 arc minutes. So this is occurring right now, right now. Can you feel it? Can you feel it? Pluto, right? Lord of the underworld, can bring up feelings of obsession. So really watch out for being sucked into the underworld through obsessive thinking, right? And as we've been talking about all of these survival fears, right, and root chakra stuff, right, and vulnerability, you know, when we open to this vulnerability, when we're asked to sort of go deep, it can really bring up this obsession. Oh, I need to know. I need to figure it out, right? We can find ourselves like really chewing on things, right? So there also might be unconscious material that rises up and pulls us into the underworld, right? And when Pluto gets involved, we tend to get sucked into the underworld, into Pluto's realm. And again, I think that as we open to vulnerability, there can be a lot of unconscious stuff that emerges, right? As we come into deep connection with other people, as we engage in intimacy, right, and closeness and sexuality, right? There's a lot of shadow material that can become unlocked by that. There's a lot of, shadow projection on sexuality, on intimacy, what it's supposed to look like, how you're supposed to do it, only missionary, only for procreation, right? And so, this might, as we like allow ourselves to be vulnerable, it might bring up some kind of challenging stuff, right? And thoughts, memories, things that we feel shame about, right? These things might kind of come into our consciousness, things that we might find ourselves mulling over or obsessively chewing on, right? And I think about Cerberus, right? The three-headed dog who guards the entrance to Hades in Greek mythology, right? And Cerberus, with these three heads, is always tracking, right? Looking for something to chase or something to chew on, right? And has three heads and three brains. So it has three trains of thought, right? That are all sort of going in different directions. Oh, what's that? What's that? What's that? Right? Kind of, hyper vigilant, hyper vigilant, right? With these three heads. And it's waiting for something to get its attention so it can gnaw on it or wrestle with it. And so, one of the things with this Pluto Mercury square, which is a challenging aspect, right? That is seeking integration. But we might find ourselves getting pulled into the Cerberus space where we find ourselves being eaten by it, like chewed on by Cerberus. Or we find ourselves unconsciously chewing on something, right? Gnawing on it, like working it over and over and over again. Right? And so, if we do find ourselves unconsciously chewing on something, think about how we might find new ways of relating to that energy, right? What we can throw it to distract it, right? So that we can leave the underworld. Or Orpheus, when he journeyed into the underworld, used music to soothe the savage beast. He put Cerberus to sleep by playing his lyre. So, music might be a really good way of kind of easing the kind of obsessive tendency to gnaw on something, right? We also using music to kind of like open space, we might allow us to go deeper into the underworld. Right? And we might notice these points of obsession, right? That we start circling around, and we might want to ask ourselves, what's under this thought or situation? What is this part trying to tell me? What is the unmet need that is living under this thought pattern that I keep chewing on or blaming somebody else about, or gnawing on these resentments, right? So Pluto also deals with power. We might find ourselves trying to dominate conversations, which I never do, by the way. Or we might try to bend others to our points of view, right? Thinking I need to be right. I'm the one. Like you need to listen to me. You need to agree with me. You need to see it through my eyes, right? Might feel like it's very important to be right and that others know how right I am because I am always right. Right. And so later in the week, Mercury will square Mars, which might cause us to get into fights, right? As we're stewing on how right I am, right? And how no one else believes me, right? By the end of the week, when Mercury squares Mars, I might just like unload that frustration on some poor civilian who has nothing to do with anything, right? Who was just in the wrong place at the wrong time, right? So just observe these feelings of I need to be right, right? That might be smoldering under the surface, right? Because this might erupt at the end of the week and come out as a shouting match or an argument, right? We also might find ourselves trying to pull others into our personal underworld, or being pulled by others into theirs, right? Mercury is the messenger in the psychopomp who is able to move between the conscious world, right, and the unconscious world of the underworld. But in a difficult aspect like a square, we might find ourselves swept up in our own or others' issues or unconscious projections, right? That pulls us into the depths of the underworld space of deep, kind of like unprocessed and unintegrated material. This can be really like uncomfortable if we just find ourselves there sitting in like a pile of unintegrated material, right? It can be really challenging. So see if you can, if you find yourself and you're like, oh, snap, I'm like, I just found myself like in all of this unintegrated shadow material in this conversation. Now, like all of this stuff is coming up for me. I feel vulnerable. I feel activated. My survival fears are going. Like this person feels like a threat. I want to fight them, right? Just see if we can like retrace our steps, right? Or walk away and take a breath. And, you don't want to like find yourself in the underworld unprepared, right? So just allow like a little bit of space. And if you do find yourself like suddenly in the underworld, don't eat or drink anything. Always bad idea to eat or drink anything in the underworld, right? But this also might be an opportunity to sort of go into the depths of ourselves and to recognize some of the hidden forces and psychological energies that are operating under the surface. And I think part of the gateway into this is the Scorpio full moon vulnerability, right? And really thinking about what is vital and what is necessary and what is like super important for me, right? And I think that this is a trailhead or an entry point into accessing some of these hidden forces or psychological energies, right? So this is a really good time for introspection and connection with the inner world. Also, probably a really good time to contemplate our own mortality, which I think is a great practice. And I think that when we can live with death as a companion, it makes life much more worth living, right? It really teaches us what's important and what we really value, right? Instead of clinging to material things, right? Because you can't take any of that with you, right? We get to if we live each day, right, like it's our last, we get to really be with what feels really important and what are the meaningful things that fill our soul instead of the kind of external material things that provide comfort and safety. And one is like I'm not advocating that we are abandoning material security, right? But to have that right relationship between the things that fill our soul and the things that allow our bodies to be safe, right? And so this is also a good time to touch into your personal underworld, right? To build a relationship with what is operating in your life at a subterranean level. And so again, Mercury is squaring both Mars and Pluto this week, right? And this is reactivating the Pluto-Mars opposition, which perfected on April 26th, which is the day before the Taurus full moon. Sorry, giant crow just sat on the hood of my car and is now staring at me, which I think is pretty great. Um, Pretty good Scorpio full moon sign, I think. So anyway, this is an opportunity, right, to kind of revisit some of the energy that was culminating and also some of the energy that was being seeded April 26th and 27th. Again, the 27th was the Taurus new moon, and the 26th was the Mars Pluto opposition, right? And Mercury will be squaring both of these planets this week, kind of returning or revisiting or reactivating some of that energy so that we can process it in a mercurial and intellectual level, right? So yeah, this is an opportunity to process some of the information that came up around power struggles, right? Obsession that may have been kicked off with that Mars-Pluto opposition, right? And Mercury helps to connect the dots and process information. So there may be things that help us to get a better understanding of what was happening at the end of April when that Mars Pluto opposition perfected. as well as, the seeds that were planted during the Taurus new moon the next day. And so this is an opportunity for insight and for awareness. And there may be some obsessive thinking as we process that information, but don't squander this opportunity feeling frustrated or picking fights with others unless that's how you really want to process things, which, sometimes we find ourselves in a fight or a conflict, right? And that is a great way of processing things and allowing things to move up and through us, right? But just try and approach these things consciously and notice, okay, this is what's happening, right? And I'm choosing this instead of I'm being pulled by these planetary forces into this conflict with this person that I really don't care about, and I don't care if they understand. I just want to win, right? Which is a thing that might come up with some of these energies. So, Friday, May the 16th, Venus leaves their shadow at 10 degrees and 50 arc minutes of Aries. So now Venus is starting to cover new ground for the first time since they stationed retrograde way back when on March the 1st. So this is an opportunity for new developments in relationships, right? New kind of aesthetic experiences, right? New ways of experiencing joy and giving and receiving love, right? So after Venus reached this point and stationed retrograde, right? This is back on March the 1st. They moved all the way back into Pisces and rethought and reimagined and reviewed all of these Venusian signatures of beauty, values, relationship, love, in all of its forms, right? Now, Venus is taking what they learned in that review process and beginning to integrate it into life in new ways, right? And it's in the sign of Aries, where Venus has a little bit of trouble, but Aries, I think, requires some courage or asks us for some bravery, right? So we get to be courageous about how we kind of express and explore and engage in what we have learned and what we are integrating about our relationships, what we like, what we don't like, how we love, who we love, what we find beautiful, and really what we value, right? And so hopefully this helps us to kind of forge new ground in our relationships and our aesthetic experiences, in the experiences of joy and our ability to say I don't like that, or like come here, come hither, right? And hopefully this helps us to update our sense of values and the kind of integrating some of the material that we have been rehashing and reworking over the Venus retrograde. So, coming up to the end of the week, this is, we have the full moon today and then not very much. And then Saturday and Sunday, things start to pop off again. So, Saturday, May the 17th, we have the Sun conjunct Uranus at 27 degrees and 17 arc minutes of Taurus. So, this conjunction will perfect on Saturday, but it's already within orb, and I think it's already activated in this Scorpio full moon because the sun is just a few degrees away from Uranus during this lunation, and then the moon will oppose Uranus later today, Monday, May the 12th. So this conjunction, the Sun Uranus conjunction on Saturday, might create disruptions in our daily routine. And I think this might be building throughout the week. So just pay attention to this, right? Disruptions may help to shine a light on things that need to change or parts of ourselves that feel really authentic and are needing to be seen. Right? Uranus is unpredictable and creates sudden change. It's looking for freedom and it can create breakdowns to create enough space for breakthroughs to occur, which sounds great, but the breakdown part always sucks, I have found, right? If we are too locked in our identity, right? The sun deals with our ego, our identity, right? And if we are kind of too locked in our identity, or our ego has been constructed from material that's not truly ours, right? External sources, or what our parents say, or what society says, and we're like, okay, this is who I am, right? Uranus can cause us to want to really upend things in order for something new and more genuine to emerge. And I'm taking Austin Kopek's year one foundations class, which is great, by the way. And one of the things that he talks about with the sun, right, which is a circle with a point in the middle, and he talks about the sun as, this glyph of the sun as, a really great representation of the sun itself, because there is this extremely hot molten core at the center of the sun. And then the outer layer, right, that heat emanates outward, and that outer layer cools by like, I don't know, some multiple tens of thousands of degrees. It's still incredibly hot, but nothing compared to that core. And this is sort of how the glyph of the sun works, right? With the circle with a dot in the middle, right? This is also how our identity works, right? We all, I think, I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, we all have this sort of burning molten core of our authentic self that lives at the heart of us. And then that emanates outward, right? And meets the Saturnian forces of real life, and it cools and it cools and it cools and it becomes our sort of persona, right? How people approach us, how we sort of engage in the world. And if this kind of exterior sense of self, this persona, is out of line with that molten core, issues can occur, right? If we make who we are, if it twists to fit the needs of our partner or our job or our society, and we abandon that molten core, like it creates a lot of psychic issues. And as Uranus conjuncts the sun, I think that this is an opportunity to break some of the calcified material on our external sort of sense of self and work to get it a little bit more in line with that burning molten core of that, true self, if you will. Right. And so I think that this is an opportunity to really break out of old patterns and to develop new habits and routines that help us to come back into alignment with that true self or that molten core of the self. Right. And we can get like kind of locked into the sun, right? And especially that outer projection. This is who I am, and this is who I have to be, and this is what I'm doing, right? And I think a lot of this comes out of like survival, right? And the need to fit in, to be accepted, to be liked, to be loved. Right? And these are all patterns that began a long time ago, and now, as like adults, whatever that means, right? Or people who have some agency in our lives, we have the ability to make choices, right? To tune into that true self and to make choices that bring us more into alignment. And Uranus, is able to sort of throw this lightning bolt and shatter experience in some ways to provide space to help us connect with that deep, true sense of self, right? And so um, Uranus helps us to kind of flip the narrative on its head, and it allows us to take a new perspective and to consider new ways of being and new life patterns that we can engage in. Right? This transit again is applying during today's Scorpio full moon, and we'll be sitting with this energy all week, but it'll be culminating on Saturday, bringing what will probably be like this is we're moving into a pretty intense week and maybe a interesting week because Uranus tends to be pretty interesting and unique. And I think that towards the end of the week, it will reach this sort of crescendo. Right? And as the energy of the week builds, we can really think about what might need to change or shift in order for us to feel a little bit more authentic, a little bit more connected to ourselves, right? Our true self, and to feel a little bit more free in our lives to express that, right? What might need to shift in order to be more in alignment with who we want to be, right? Because um, just because we hold these ideals doesn't necessarily mean that things will happen in that way, but it gives us a point of orientation, right? To really think about that authentic self, like helps us to orient to that and to navigate towards that, right? Uranus is about striving for the idealized vision. And they have this way of blowing things up that don't really reach that ideal, right? And they want to reach this kind of perfected ideal. And if a person or a situation doesn't meet that, Uranus has a way of flipping the table and running away and starting again, right? In Greek mythology, Uranus or Uranus, who's the sky god, right, rejects his children and forces them back into the earth because they weren't perfect enough. They weren't good enough for him, right, for his high standards. He only wanted to accept the best, but nothing ever lived up to his high standards. And this is something to pay attention to, right? All the things that we might reject because like they're not perfect or it's not like totally who I need to be. And so I think that there is this balancing act of holding this idealized vision while being able to accept the reality of the situations, right? The yeah, to like recognize where we want things to live up to their highest potential and the places where we can learn to accept how things actually are, right? Again, the sun is a symbol of our identity and our aspirations and can be very impacted by Uranus's ideal for the desire for the ideal, right? And so we want to aspire towards this imaginal ideal without needing to cut ourselves down or cut off parts of ourselves, or force them back into the earth that don't meet the sky god's exacting standards. Right. So we can use this transit as a way of cracking open old structures, both internal and external, in order to allow some space for our light to shine through or for some more light to get in. Right. So this can be the lightning strike of inspiration that helps us to break down old ego structures and inauthentic identity constructs, as well as oppressive social orders, so that we can feel a little bit more free. Right? Uranus is unpredictable, which can be destabilizing. But we can think about ways that we can lean into the change that we are offered, instead of trying to resist or ignore the ability or the opportunity to change. However, right, and this is important, we need a very strong solar consciousness, right? A kind of sense of self, both individually and I think collectively, to be able to hold the lightning flash of the Iranian inspiration, right? Without a strong ego construct, without a good sense of self or connection with that authentic self, when that lightning bolt strikes, it might, break things apart, which can be really challenging. So really thinking about what that ego container that the sun brings, and how that can help hold that energy of Uranus so that we can channel it through us instead of sort of flying apart, right? And, as we hold it and channel it, right, and allow it to move cleanly through, it can create positive and really visionary change in ourselves and in the world, right? And so Uranus is also connected with the myth of Prometheus, who stole solar fire. And I think that this is a really interesting, moment, right? As Uranus or Prometheus comes in contact with the sun, right? And is able to maybe take some of that solar fire, right? That authentic molten core of the sun, right? And bring it in a fennel stalk to give to humanity. Humans, us folk, right? Were Uranus's creation, or Prometheus's creation, I should say. And he wanted to see us live up to our full potential. And this required us to receive the gift of fire. And once we received fire, we could cook food, which created like a really powerful physiological change where we needed less of a robust gut that was required to digest uncooked food. And so our gut shrank and our brains increased. And so by getting fire and learning to cook food, right, it creates a correlation with the increase in humans' brain size. So physical fire helped to kindle the fire of consciousness. And as Prometheus brings solar fire to the earth, uh, he gives all of us direct, unmediated experience of the sun, right? And as when you flick a lighter, it's like a correlation with the sun, right? As we are seeing these reflected lights, even though it's like very far away, all of the kind of electrodes, transistors, this is all like from fire, right? The solar fire that comes down to us that then disseminates into all of our devices and everything that we engage with, right? And this is an important thing to remember, right? And this is an unmediated experience of this sort of solar fire and the divine light that burns within each of us, right? And is our birthright. Right? Without the gift of solar fire to humanity, it would only be accessible through the elites, through priests, through kings, through famous artists. However, we all have this creative spark of consciousness. And when the sun conjuncts Uranus, this is an opportunity to really kindle our unique spark. to bring it to life and to share it in the world. And also, it's an opportunity to bring more of this solar fire into our lives, whatever that means for you. Okay, lastly, Uranus is a revolutionary. This planet upends orders and creates radical change in order to reach the idealized vision. Uranus through Taurus is sort of like this earthquake, which is destabilizing resources and fixed structures of security that Taurus likes to create. Right? This is happening so that something new can emerge. With the sun's conjunction to Uranus, we have this opportunity to really, step into the radical energy of this planet and to stand up for the ideals that we are striving for and to really identify and begin to take action around the changes that we want to see occur in this world. All right, so I'm running out of time here, but whatever, I'm on a roll, so I'm gonna keep going. So also Saturday, May the 17th, and I'll try and keep it quick so I don't keep you all too long at detention. So also Saturday, May the 17th, we have this Mercury square, Mercury and Taurus square to Mars and Leo. This is occurring at 13 degrees and 53 arc minutes. Right, so Mercury is moving through this T square with Mars and Pluto this week, right? Coming off the square from Pluto during Monday's full moon, now moving into a square with Mars and Leo, helping, and I think this is helping to process some of the tension that was experienced during the Mars-Pluto opposition, which again was exact on April the 26th, just one day before the Taurus new moon. So we're experiencing several themes that were really active at the end of April this week. And this is a harvest and integration time, right? And Mercury is our kind of cognitive abilities. It's our ability to make connections and to communicate our thoughts and our experiences. With Mercury coming into a square with both Mars and Pluto, this is an opportunity to make sense of some of the power struggles and the challenges that we experienced at the end of April as the Mars-Pluto opposition perfected for the third and final time. This may have been a time of frustration, right, and tension and power struggles. And now we get an opportunity to make sense of what was coming up and what we can do with that information, right? So, what does this have to teach us? What did it show us about ourselves and the world? What did we learn about how power functions and how we hold power, how we can access power, how we can use power, and what actions can we take in the world? With Mercury square Mars, there's this kind of friction between our thoughts and our actions. We might find the information that we're taking in adds to feelings of frustration and anger. We might find ourselves being short-tempered, right? And again, the Sun is conjunct Uranus, which is going to feel like kind of like right, the same day, and we might find ourselves getting frustrated or not being able to communicate our Uranian insights and flashes of inspiration, which might make us feel frustrated, right? Overwhelmed. We might be short-tempered. We might end up, unloading our anger on people we are in communication with, right? There's some friction here. And think about this hard aspect between Mercury and Mars, is fighting words, right? Mars energy of struggle, fight, conflict coming out through our communication. This is an opportunity for some intense mental work, but if our flow gets broken or we lose our train of thought, we might find ourselves getting easily frustrated. We might find ourselves getting pulled into arguments or conflicts, right? Mars does not want to back down from a fight, right? So if somebody's like, no, like that's not true, Mars is going to be like, oh yeah, like let me tell you, right? Especially with all that Pluto building up, right? From that Mercury square to Pluto, right? I need to be right. Let me show you. I'll tell you, right? So watch out for getting baited into disputes that are going to drain your energy. So like maybe don't comment on your racist uncle's Facebook post, right? Stop and think if this is going to be productive or I'm just looking to kind of release my frustrations on somebody. It might help to have a project that you can focus on instead of like trolling people on the internet looking for a fight, right, to deal with these feelings of frustration. And so, again, this is coming out of the Mercury square to Pluto, which may have brought up some difficult unconscious material or made us want to control others or bend them to our points of view. So, his energy might have been smoldering all week, right? With this Mercury square to Mars, we might think we have found an opportunity to finally unload our frustrations through an argument, right? So Mercury might also be reinvigorating the power struggles of the Mars-Pluto opposition, and this might be a way for us to mentally process that opposition. Might be a way, or it might be a way to avoid integrating some of that material, right? So this might be a good time to stand up for your beliefs and to fight for what you believe in. It also might be an equally good time to get into an argument that totally drains your energy and goes nowhere, right? You need to choose. And it might be important to like sit and stop and ask yourself, is this worth it, right? Is this where I want to spend my energy? Okay, we're coming to the end, so I'm going to skip what I was going to say about Jupiter squaring the nodes of the moon, which is occurring on Saturday as well. And we're going to skip to Sunday. Bloop, bloop, bloop. Okay, uh, Sunday, May the 18th. Jupiter in Gemini sextiles Chiron in Aries. This is an opportunity to create a new story around our experience of suffering, right? Chiron, the wounded healer, who is, continually suffering from an unhealed wound of the Hydra poison, is the teacher of heroes and the wounded healer, but also experiences a fair amount of suffering throughout his illustrious career. Jupiter has a quality of meaning making, right? And it's about coherence. So I think that this is a really great opportunity at the end of the week to really consider the stories that we are telling ourselves about our lives and our experience, right? And to help us make meaning out of these experiences, especially the challenging experiences that activate our wounds, right? And our core wounds. Right. Jupiter has this look on the bright side, optimistic quality that allows Jupiter to construct a narrative of hope and faith, which helps to really shift the Chiron wound from a place of victimhood to a narrative of empowerment and growth. Jupiter can help us to see the places where Chiron's experience can be reframed from needless suffering into a belief that we can tend our wounds and grow through these difficult experiences, and that these difficult experiences help us to grow into who we can be and to be of service to others. And in doing so, we can help ourselves and others who have experienced similar wounds, right? It's really difficult to grow in the middle of a crisis, right? And I think this is really important to remember. But when we have the opportunity to step back and observe difficult experiences from a safe distance, we're able to gain some perspective on them, right? This provides us with the chance to make changes in our lives and to build a foundation for new growth. Difficult experiences and painful situations can create psychic change that helps us to come more fully into ourselves and who we can be, right? And so Jupiter, whose bird is the eagle, provides this sort of detached eagle eye view on our experiences through this supportive aspect with Chiron and the Chiron wound. Right? This allows us to look a little bit more objectively at circumstances. Jupiter also brings this optimism, right, that tells us that change is possible. And Jupiter brings the coherence and meaning making to the Chiron wound, right? Oh, this sucked, right? This was really painful and difficult, but how do we shift this from, oh my God, why did this happen to me? Or like, oh, I hate this, or I hate you, or you betrayed me, into, how does this support who I can be and who I can grow into? How does this support our connection with our authentic self? And so when we get outside of ourselves or the wound, we can begin to tell a story of how this can support our growth towards who we want to be instead of being locked in the suffering of a challenging experience or a betrayal, right? Jupiter is about wisdom and sharing that wisdom to create a sense of coherence, both individually as well as on a societal and social and community level. Chiron, right, grows into a teacher who helps people to grow into the heroes they were meant to be. Through processes of learning and sharing of that knowledge, Chiron comes into a sense of his purpose. Right? Chiron also maintains this animal consciousness. He's a centaur, right? Half human, half horse. And he has this deep connection with the movement and the flow of the natural world. He's able to translate, this experience into the world of human logic. But he works to integrate and hold that animal wisdom as well as the human integrate intellect and to integrate these things. So this Jupiter sextile expands our ability to hold and integrate both of these ways of being and knowing, right? The bottom up, animal, instinctual, intuitive, and the top down, human, logical. The story that Jupiter helps us to construct about our experience helps us to shift our perspective on life. Jupiter says that things are not happening to you, but happening for you, which I know, like, that's a cliche and it sounds trite, but the Jupiterian optimism helps us to find the antidote to the poison, right, in the wound itself. Jupiter helps us to really alchemize challenging situations by expanding our ability to stay present and recognizing the gifts that these difficult experiences provide us with. Right? Through the challenge of the Chiron wound, we were able to grow more fully into ourselves and to share our gifts with the world. Oh, this is what worked for me. Oh, I went through this difficult experience and like I was able to do this and this and this. And I found these things or these teachers or these herbs or these books or this pathway, right? Let me share that with you because that was really helpful for me. Right. And this is, I think, how we can really step into who we can be in the world. Right? Um, Chiron can become really bitter and cynical, right? Through like having to constantly hold and process that wound. But Jupiter provides a sense of joviality, right? And like it's big. It's like I can hold this. Like I got this, right? Can help us to bear the difficulties of the Chiron wounds. Jupiter really helps us to laugh at the absurdity of life circumstances, right? And shift our perspective to create different meanings around the events that we experience. And it gives us the faith required to both bear our wounds and to find a path to healing. So in the myth, Chiron, at the end of the myth, Chiron is finally cured of his unhealed wound by trading his life for the life of Prometheus, Uranus, right, who we met earlier. Zeus is so pleased with the sacrifice that he carries Chiron into the stars where he lives on as a constellation. Right. So part of this shows that healing and resolution comes from letting go, right? From not holding on. Oh, I need to be this. I need to be this energy signature. Oh, I need to be this centaur, right? We can let go and just surrender the old story that we have been carrying about who we are, who we need to be, what has happened to us, how awful that was, right? If we can let go, which is not an easy thing, right? And this is a practice, and someday we let go, pick it back up, let it go, pick it back up. But I think what Chiron teaches us, if we can finally let go of the old story, right, then we can transform the narrative that we hold around our wounds and our experience, right? And there is something transcendent that can happen. If we also might the old story that we're holding about our experiences, right, and continuing to tell that like locks us into that cycle of suffering, and it helps to keep us sick. So how do we transform the story or author a new narrative that helps support our healing and our personal growth, right, that brings coherence to our experience? Right? How do we surrender our attachment to our wounds so that we can live on, not as a person defined by their past, but as a collection of stars or points, right? That helps shine light into the world and helps other people who are moving along a similar path to orient to. And we can think about this relationship, right? Uh, Jupiter and the sort of faith and optimism that Jupiter brings to in through this sextile, this supportive aspect to Chiron in this wounded part, right? We can think about this relationship as post-traumatic growth. And according to Ralph De La Rosa in his book Outshining Trauma, which is pretty great, it's a Buddhist perspective on IFS and parts work. Right. Ralph says post traumatic growth is any time somebody makes life more beautiful, more purposeful, more powerful in response to what they've endured. I'm going to just read that one more time. Post traumatic growth is any time somebody makes life more beautiful, more purposeful, and more powerful in response to what they've endured. Right. And so I think with this relationship between Jupiter and Chiron, this is an opportunity to really make life more beautiful and more purposeful, and more powerful in response to the difficulty that we've experienced. Right. Trauma, big T, little t, right? A heartbreak, physical ailment, etc. Right. And he goes on to say, and I'm kind of paraphrasing here, that post-traumatic growth is allowing the pain of our previous experiences to propel us towards experiences of developing stronger bonds with loved ones, engaging with and developing supportive community connections, being of service, gaining deeper appreciation for life, channeling our emotions into creative work and expression, deepening spirituality and connection, acts of play and the reclamation of joy and a childlike sense of wonder, and tuning and turning within for healing, insight, and realization. And with that, my friends, I will bid you a fond farewell. And thanks for tuning in for this full moon, Scorpio full moon edition of This Week in Space. I'm your host with the most, Joan Emerson Bell. I'm an astrologer, tarot reader. I do coaching. I am a therapist in the land of enchantment. So I don't know if you need an astrology reading or you want to talk more about how all of this stuff might be affecting your natal chart, hit me up. I'll put a link to my website. You can find me on Instagram, Blind Stallion Space Wizard. You know that if you're on Instagram. Oh, thank you, Shayla. Nice to see you. Um, yeah, this also comes out. If you missed this on Instagram, it comes out on YouTube. If you want to watch this live and comment on YouTube, you can hit me up on Instagram. I also do a sometimes weekly astrology themed radio show called the Melee Report. I did not get around to it this week, and I'm kind of bummed because there's a bunch of Mother's Day songs that I wanted to play. However, I needed to take a break. Your wizard be working hard for you. You know what I'm saying? And I needed to take a break. So hopefully I'll get to that next week. So stay tuned in for that. That's on SoundCloud called the Melee Report. Other than that, that's all the astro weather that is fit to print, my friends. Thank you all so much for tuning in. And yeah, I'll see you next week. Same wizard time, same wizard channel. And until then, be good to yourselves, be good to each other. And as always, may the force be with you. Bye now.